Okay, with a TI-84, I'm going to make and display this data and its linear regression, or the best fit line for this data. Okay, forgot to mention another term for best fit line in linear regression is the least square regression. It's called the least square because it's done by calculating the physical distance from every point to the line and squaring it. When you find all of those distances, the line that has the smallest or the least total distance of all the points squared is the best fit line by definition. That's how your calculator does it. Just like to point out at this time, there are other statistical methods that are considered valid. So it's just the type of best fit line is called a least square line for the calculator. So I'm going to turn my calculator on, clear it. I'm going to start off with the setup. First thing before we get going, I'd like you to push the second function catalog button, and then push the button on the calculator where it says x to the negative 1, or more importantly, d. Go down until you see diagnostic on, hit enter, and now I'm about to run a program by hitting enter. You never have to do this setup again. So again, it was just second function, catalog, D, down to diagnostic on, and enter. By doing this, the calculator is going to calculate a value called R. This value tells us how close the data is to perfectly linear, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. So, first thing I'd like to do, anytime you're going to do a regression, you should ask yourself, is it reasonable to do a regression? So I'm looking at this data, and are these points are not linear. They do not line up perfectly on any line. But I'd like to look at the data and say, okay, does it seem reasonable to make a straight line to describe the data collectively? So we're going to do that by looking at the data. I'm going to push the Stat button, and number 1 is for Edit, to enter the data. To enter the data, I'm going to click 0, enter, 1, enter, 2, enter, 3, enter, 4, enter. That's my X values. My Y values are 2, 4.6, 5.8, 8, 9.8. Enter. So I've entered my data. This next step I'm about to show you is also going to be a one-time thing. You do it one time for the semester, you'll never have to do it again. And I'm going to tell my calculator how I would like to look at this data, how I want it to graph it. I'm going to do that by hitting the second function, stat plot. This goes and sets up how the calculator plots data. I want to look at the very first one, stat plot number 1, by hitting 1, or simply enter. I am not going to turn it off and on here. I'm just going to do the setup here. I would like the very first type of graph. That's what I have highlighted now. If something else is highlighted, then go to the very first one and hit enter so that it is highlighted. Second function, stat plot number 1 is how we enter this screen. So, next thing, I want to make sure that my X list is L1. Let's say it's something else, like L3. I don't want it to be L3, I want it to be L1, because we put our X values in the first list. So I highlight the X list, I notice in number 1 button, the actual 1 on the calculator, above it says L1 in blue. For me, my blue is my second function. I push second function, number 1, and it inserts L1 there for me. I want my Y list to be L2. Same procedure. L2 is the number 2 button on your calculator. Above it in blue is L2. For me, for this particular calculator, you might have different colors, but it's the second function, number 2, to make sure that your Y list is L2. The next choice you can make is, how would you like to physically see the plot? You have 3 options. It'll put little O's for the data, it'll put little plus signs for the data, or it'll put tiny little dots for the data. I highly suggest you never use that. Little dots. Very, very difficult to see. I like to use the circles or the pluses. That's a preference choice. So I'm going to use the circle. My calculator is now set up to be able to do a stat plot anytime I want it to. But I will not turn it on and off in the screen. So once I've done this, I never have to come back here ever again. So I'm just going to hit second function, mode, which is quit. I'm going to turn my plot off and on in the y equals window just by pushing y equals. Do not push any other button before y equals. You just put y equals. Notice you can enter formulas. If you see any formulas, delete them. I don't want to see random formulas when I graph something. I want to turn on plot 1. It's very simple to turn it off, and it's very simple to turn it on. I go up, hit enter, come down, and it is highlighted. Highlighted means on. If I do not want to look at this later and I want to clear it out so I don't have to see it, I go up, I hit enter, I come down, it is no longer highlighted. That means off. So I want to hit up, enter, down, and the only thing I'm about to look at is the data that I entered from X and Y on the table right here. I'm going to look at a data now. Calculator has a wonderful feature. It will set the window of the screen perfectly to the data I've just asked it to graph. I'm going to do that by hitting the zoom button, coming down to where it says zoom nicely for me, please, on the stats that I just asked you to graph. Zoom stat. Hit enter, and there is my data with a nice, perfect setup. Now, it seems very reasonable that this data is approximately linear, which means I have some line that's going to look approximately like that. And I'm going to ask my calculator to find the equation of that line for me. Actually, I'm going to ask it 2 things at the same time. I'm going to ask it to find it for me, and I'm going to ask it to put it in for the equation y1 at the exact same time. So the red line I just drew is approximately what I think my calculator will calculate. So how do I ask the calculator? What I'm going to do is go to, let's get out of here by hitting second function, quit. I want to do calculations on that data. That data is referred to as statistics. So I start by pushing my stat button. Notice on the very top there is a calculate. I'd like to go over using my arrow to calculate, and I'd like to go down to number 4 where it says linear regression in the form AX plus B. I'm going to hit enter. The calculator specifically the 84 is asking me to, well, it's showing me what it's about to do. It's going to use L1 for the X list. It's going to use L2 for the Y list, which it does not show you that for the 83, but by default, that's what it is, unless you change it. Now, for the 84, I'm going to start by I'd like to store this regression equation as Y1 so I can also graph the line. So to do that, I push my variables button. I'm going to go over to Y variables. I like an equation of a function to be stored as Y1, which is number 1. So again, I'll go through that process one more time. I push the variables button, go over to the right to Y variables, push number 1 for functions, push number 1 again for Y1. I can graph it as Y2, Y3, Y4, whatever I would like to graph it for. And now I go down, and it's about to calculate the formula of the best fit line. And there it is. Now, it's very important that the equation of the line is completely determined by A and B, my constants. Why does the calculator use A and B? Because A is the first letter in the alphabet. B is the next letter in the alphabet. If I was asking this to calculate a formula that had 3 constants, it would use A, B, and C. So, this line of best fit, or least squares line, is y equals 1.9x plus 2.24. That is my formula of the line I'm looking for. Now, since I was very nice and asked the calculator to put that in there for me, it's already storing it. And when I hit graph, pretty much looks exactly what I drew by hand. That is the line of best fit. Push graph. So, that's the best fit line, and that is how I set up a linear regression using my calculator.